This is KHOI 89.1 Story City Ames, and you are listening to I Am Able Iowa, where we discuss the ability and disability. I am Nancy Baker Curtis. I'm a public school teacher, board president for the ARC of Iowa, and a parent advocate. I will be your host for today. I'm joined by my co-host, Zach Meekum, who comes to us from Allies in Advocacy. I'm very excited for today's show, and so for our listeners, I'd like to present our guest. Um, our guest for today is Corinthia Grootveld from the Arthritis Foundation of Iowa. She's a person from the Arthritis Foundation Board and a person who lives with rheumatoid arthritis. So for our listeners, Corinthia, would you just take a few minutes to introduce yourself a little bit more, share your connection about your disability and how you found yourself on the Arthritis Board?
Yes. So I've been with the board itself for a little over a year. And my story actually with the Arthritis Foundation itself here in Iowa started many, many years ago with my mom, actually. So it's come full circle. So my mom started volunteering with the Arthritis Foundation when I myself was diagnosed at the age of 6. And when I was diagnosed, they did not have really any kind of treatment for me. This was back in the 90s, early 90s. Back then for kids, all they had really was lots of steroids and anti-inflammatory medications. So things like naproxen and Tylenol. And now, obviously, thanks to the efforts of the Arthritis Foundation and the researchers, we now have these amazing drugs that can now help children thrive and live real lives as kids and go to school and do sports. So it's quite a remarkable ride that I've been on, and to be able to watch the Arthritis Foundation grow over the last 32 years that I've lived with this disease. So, but yes, I was diagnosed at age 6, and it was the Arthritis Foundation actually that secured a scholarship for me to go to summer camp with other kids with arthritis. And I normally would not have ever had that kind of a chance. But then, it was through them I had opportunities to meet other kids like myself, and we got to meet other families. My mom got to meet other parents with kids that had JRA, which is what we called it back then. And, my mom and my dad were able to, then feel like this fight was not just theirs to bear. So.
One thing that I love about this show is that we get to address a lot of misconceptions about things that people sometimes assume they know everything about. Like I, for instance, didn't know that arthritis as a juvenile, I'm guessing JRA stands for juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, was something that happened. So how common is that? And how,
That's a great question. That's a great question. So right now we have, arthritis is the number one cause of disability in America. It's in the number one cause of disability in the nation. Over 60 million adults are diagnosed with it, and over 300,000 children are diagnosed. And that's, a staggering amount in my mind. And it's, by that count, that's like 1 in 4. And so when you think about it, like for me, back in the 90s, I was, I felt like I was the only one that was in a wheelchair back in my school. But now that there's more awareness, more education, there's a lot more, just there's a lot more students out there that are more aware of, their fellow, peers that have this condition and are able to actually, engage with their peers that have this condition and are able to help. And, especially with, we have a Live Yes campaign that promotes our arthritis network. So patients and, their caregivers can connect, and it's absolutely amazing. If you go onto our website at arthritis.org, you can actually search that Live Yes campaign, and it'll show you all of the different connect groups that we offer. And if you go to our Facebook page, you'll actually be able to see all of the different support groups that we have.
So, Zach, you love this show because it challenges your thinking about stereotypes and preconceptions.
Yeah.
I love this show because Corinthia is actually a listener and reached out to us about being on the show and bringing this awareness. And so I just want our listeners to know, I believe it's May is National Arthritis Awareness Month. And what we're highlighting here is something that I think is a common misconception. And we want to not only elevate and amplify conversations, we want to educate.
Yes.
So, as you said, arthritis is something that many people have, but like everything and every disability, it's a spectrum.
Yes.
A lot of people hear arthritis and they just think, oh, you're aging into immobility or you have aches and pains. That's not an accurate perception at all. And so the juvenile rheumatoid arthritis that you have is more complex than, say, the arthritis someone might have that comes with aging. Am I correct to assume that?
Yes. So there's 7 different common types of arthritis. You have RA, which is what now I have, rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune condition. It can affect your entire body. It's basically when your immune system attacks itself. And so it can affect my eyes, my lungs, my heart, my liver, everything. It's systemic. And then you've got OA, which is osteoarthritis. That comes from the wear and tear of the joints. And so that is most often seen in folks who do those heavy impacting sports, like you'll see lots of sports injuries, or dancers, like athletics, those people who do really tough labor jobs, stuff like that. Then you have ankylosing spondylitis that's primarily diagnosed in the spine, psoriatic arthritis, where it attacks the skin as well, gout and Raynaud's. And then within the family of arthritis, you have 100 different other kinds, branching from lupus to fibro and Sjogren's. And there's some myths that, it's only old people, but no, kids as young as 3 have been diagnosed. It's incredible. And it's crazy that so you mentioned myths. There's 3 dominant myths that people, myself I've run into, and they're like, exercise makes it worse. So you shouldn't be exercising. You shouldn't be lifting weights or anything. And that's the one thing that I run into, because I love the gym. In my 20s, I was, once I got out of my wheelchair, which we'll discuss, I got really into lifting weights. I was not lifting crazy heavy, but I was, lifting those light weights, those little 5-10 pounders. And people thought I was losing my mind. And exercise actually helps you maintain fluidity within that joint space and helps you maintain mobility. With arthritis, any type, it's a delicate balance of rest and activity. And when you get diagnosed, it starts you on a journey of getting to know your body and really learning, okay, is today a rest day? Is today an active day? Or is it a little bit of both? And it really is just like, it's a delicate balance of that. And then, of course, the old adage of don't crack your knuckles, you're going to get arthritis. And that one, it's an old wives' tale. There's nothing more to that. The sound of your knuckles cracking is just the synovial fluid just popping. And there's just nothing more to that. But yeah. Now, I know some listeners will probably be asking, is arthritis preventable or curable? As we talking about our walk that is coming up as we walk for a cure. It is, some can be preventable. As I mentioned, osteoarthritis. That is preventable as much as you can. I would say with, there's like factors such as like your weight can, as long as you maintain a healthy weight, that can help prevent major joint damage. And then RA, like rheumatoid arthritis, predominantly is more common in women. Genetics really, really plays a role when it comes to these different types of arthritis. However, all of these types that I've discussed today are more manageable, and that is thanks to the efforts of the Arthritis Foundation and the funds that we have raised for the research, because thanks to all of that fundraising that we do, we have money to be put towards treatments and, research for these treatments. We have new medications, we've got new, exercise, ideas and, mobility ideas. It's, who knew that Tai Chi, an ancient exercise, was going to be so beneficial for us. And yoga and Pilates, very, very new.
That's so interesting. And, Corinthia, you're saying so many things that I, as a person, find challenging to stereotypes and myths that I've heard. I actually have a parent, my dad is diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and you just shared that it's a diagnosis that mostly comes with women. So again, challenging some of the things that I have in my preconceptions. However, rheumatoid arthritis, well, probably based on some genetic factors as well as environmental conditions.
Oh, yes.
Is not the same for everyone. You spoke about mobility and the need to stay active. You also talked about improvements in medications and therapeutic options for people.
Yes.
All of that's super important. However, I'm really thinking about the different phases of your life that you're in. And obviously for a younger person, being active is probably easier for someone who's older. When you talked about some of those resources, the education materials that are available on the website, do they break them down into those different age groups, or is it just kind of general best practices for whatever age and season of life?
So on the website, we do offer different source material and different like exercise groups per, age group. So we have different programs like Walk with Ease and the Arthritis Foundation Aquatic Program that are distinctively like set aside for seniors, although any age could join. And the Arthritis Foundation Exercise Program would be open to any age over 18. And then we have a few more other like exercise-based programs that would then be more open to like ages 16 and over. It just depends on like where you're located. And then
I'm sure those groups really help you find a sense of community, right?
Oh yes. And so our JA parent advocacy support groups that we generally meet on Saturdays, and we meet once a month, and those you can find on our Facebook page. And whenever we meet, we always talk about different treatments that have failed or worked. We talk about different therapies that are going great for us, and we even talk about different like foods that might be triggering. You never know what you're going to get when you come to a support meeting for us. I mean, the last one I attended, we had a young girl that's going off to college and, getting excited and, well, what am I going to do with my medication? And I'm like, I can tell you what I did. And thankfully, she doesn't have the type of medication that needs to be locked up, like mine was. My parents actually had to install a padlock onto our mini fridge so that I can take my medication down there and store it. It was wild. And that was quite the experience. But yeah, there's quite a lot of different treatments out there, but your rheumatologist, your arthritis doctor, your physician will go through each and every one of these with you in detail when you get to that point. And this is something that I highly recommend for every patient once they get diagnosed. And like, this is the thing that I always talk to somebody when they get diagnosed. I have a lot of people come to me and they're like, oh, I'm diagnosed and it's heartbreaking. And I'm like, no, like you have answers now. Like you should be celebrating because now you can find treatment, you can get help, and you can figure out a game plan. For my family, we went quite a few years without knowing what was going on. And during that time frame, it was causing such severe joint damage that my feet and my hands look like that of, a 90-year-old person. It's terrible. And, I have such severe, joint damage that it's irreplaceable. Like it cannot be fixed. And I would not wish that on anyone. And so now, thanks to the scientific, breakthroughs sponsored by the Arthritis Foundation, we have people getting diagnosed very early on, and they can, seek out these treatments and these advances. And it's amazing. And like the one thing that I do recommend early on though is therapy, because your body is going through a dramatic change. And I specifically urge that in our youth population when they're diagnosed, because, number one, your body's going to be changing anyway, going through puberty, but there's a lot that you may not be able to do. And that your friends are going to be able to do, but you're not. And, that's really hard to cope with as a kid. And, if you don't have the right tools to go through that, it can really lead to some grave mistakes. So, but
You mentioned your support group just recently.
yes,
The young lady that was going off to college, and then you brought up, the importance of having support early on. Um, do you have any positive examples or stories from the support program of just people making breakthroughs or turning things around?
So this young lady that I had spoken to, she herself is, well, she was our youth honoree last year, and she, way back when, I would say like 5-10 years ago, did not think she'd be going to college because, just her joints were that bad, and she'd had a number of knee surgeries, and if I'm not mistaken, and I'm sure her mom was pretty nervous about her going away to college, as my mom was. But now, thanks to like technology being as amazing as it is, she can go to college and see her very own rheumatologist, just like we are. We're not in the same room, but she can see her same rheumatologist across the state or across states, and, keep her care team the same, and that's something that I did not have. And this is what's amazing. So when I went to school in Florida, and, they would do my blood tests and everything, and then mail the results back up to Iowa. But when it came time to do actual like doctor visits, I had to fly back home. And because there was no way, this wasn't invented yet. Zoom and, Google Meets and all of that stuff was not invented yet. And I think, had I had this kind of support, and, had I had more, more chat rooms, and even like if Facebook had more of those, online chronic illness support groups, I think I would have done a lot better in college. I don't want to date myself, but
you can't be older than me, so you're fine.
No, but yeah, this young lady that I'm speaking of, she is going to be doing so well. She's going to have so many friends that will be able to understand her and be able to support her in so many ways. And as far as accessibility at her school, she's going to be able to attend class virtually, and not have to miss, days of her classes, on account that she is not feeling up to going to class or she can't walk. Whereas I've, had to miss countless days because I couldn't get out of bed, and there was no way of me virtually attending class. So
You've said a couple things that I really want to kind of highlight because
Yes.
I've connected with them myself. I don't have rheumatoid arthritis and I don't have a disability, but I am the parent of a disabled child.
Yes.
And you talked about your parents waiting for diagnosis.
Yes.
And kind of that loss that you had until diagnosis came. And I have to say, I connected with this moment very deeply because we are still waiting for a primary diagnosis for my son. And, Tom Petty said it the best, the waiting is the hardest part. It's just this kind of feeling of loss or wandering, seeking and not finding. And so, what a diagnosis gives you is a community. And
It
while
does.
the community might be a small one, like you in the case of juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, it's still a community and there are support systems and resources. Another thing you said that I really connected with was the idea of the need to travel for care. Because when you have something that is unique or complex, the idea that you can just get your health care in your local community at your local clinic is really thrown out the window. And I think that this is something that we really like to highlight and bring to the forefront here on the I Am Able show. Healthcare is a human right, and access to that healthcare is incredibly important. Because you had an early diagnosis and access to healthcare, you were able to have a college-bound life. Even though there were challenges, you talked about the need for accommodations. Undoubtedly, you had a health plan, a 504, and these federal protections all made it possible so that you could go out and make the best version of yourself. And so, as we segue into a little bit more about you personally and your backstory, I really would like to encourage our listeners to keep these things at the forefront. While we're talking about something that we all have heard the term arthritis, right? We're not talking about some rare genetic disease. The idea that still accessing those systems, those supports, and those services are still incredibly difficult without the right group of people supporting you along the way, i.e., family members, organizations, or even the federal protections that we all have. And so I just would encourage our listeners that if they're just tuning in and they're listening to I Am Able, to know that we're talking with Corinthia Grootveld from the Arthritis Foundation Board, and she is a person living with rheumatoid arthritis. It is the number one cause of physical disability in our country, and I am so grateful to her to be here and to challenge all of my stereotypes and misconceptions about what it is to be a person living with this chronic condition. So, Cynthia, you've made references to your personal journey, but can you take us back to the beginning? Can you really talk about what it was like to be a kid and have this diagnosis? You mentioned you're a wheelchair user, so I feel like there's just pieces of your personal story that we're missing.
Yes. So, first off, all credit goes to my wonderful and incredible mother. Without her, like, my life would have been just awful. I was probably around like 4.5, 5, when like major symptoms probably started showing. I was originally born with really soft nails, and when my teeth came in, they were incredibly soft. And then around age 2, my skin basically broke out in what was then diagnosed as really aggressive eczema and psoriasis. And back then, they did not even link the two. And I was then, at around age 5, my wrists started hurting really, really bad. And I was, placed in braces, and the my pediatrician kept saying, oh, it's tendinitis. Oh, it's growing pains. And my mom knew something else was wrong. She was like, this is not right. And at the time we were living in Cedar Rapids, and she's like, and we were going to the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics, pediatric care, and going down there for the dermatology clinic for my skin. I had already been hospitalized many times for just my skin alone. And it was while we were down there, I had, when I was around 6 years old was when I was diagnosed officially with the juvenile arthritis. And it was because I had basically had a giant lump on my wrist. And, you know, we had gone down there and it was like almost immediate that they diagnosed me. Within months, they had sent me to the Mayo Clinic up in Minnesota for more testing. And like within 3 months, I was in a wheelchair full time because the arthritis had spread to 90% of my joints. It was that severe and that quick. At that time, I was only on prescription strength naproxen and steroids, predominantly prednisone. I was a very chunky kid because of the steroids and in a lot of pain still. My mom ended up quitting her job and staying home to watch me and take me to all of my many appointments. Thankfully, the elementary school I was in was all lower level, but my school did not know what to do with a kid in a wheelchair. And so there was quite a many times when we'd go out to recess and I would be left in the classroom, or I would be wheeled out there and just kind of left in one place. And so I became a book nerd. And it was
to be so difficult for you as a kid, and you had no voice really yet, right?
No.
Because did you even know how to use your wheelchair yet? Could you even roll yourself, or did you need someone else to do it? Because with having this joint inflammation, it
was hard. Yeah. I predominantly relied on my friends to push me. I had some, close friends that I would rely on, like to push me down the hall. Looking back, I wonder if some of them thought it was like, a crude joke, or if they were really like saw me as a person or not. And I'm hoping that they, truly thought of me as their friend. It's really hard to know in those moments. But yeah, like my hands were so bad that there were many moments when I would try to use my chair and I just physically couldn't. And so as I got older, it was age 8 that I started using a medication called methotrexate. It's a disease-modifying anti-rheumatic medication, and I've been on that medication since age 8. And I know a lot of listeners who have it will know exactly what I'm talking about. It is technically
what you're talking about.
Yeah, they will. To them, it's a technical low dose chemo, and it is a heavy hitting medication, but it really helps. It's what cleared up my skin and really helped with all the pain. Fast forward to entering into 6th grade, I was introduced to some researchers through the Arthritis Foundation. And my mom, met these guys and met these doctors, and we were at one doctor's visit at I think it was at the U of I hospital, and we're like, okay, here's this new med. It's not FDA approved yet. This was wild. It was not FDA approved. and they're doing trials on it with kids. And we want to see if it would be helpful. And the drug was called Enbrel. And we tried it. And it took some adjusting with my other medications. And by then I had failed and tried a number of anti-inflammatory medications, including Vioxx, which is now discontinued. And yeah, long story short, by my 8th grade year, I was an ambulatory user. I was in physical therapy, learning how to walk. And by my freshman year in high school, I was wheelchair free, thanks to this medication. And so that class of medication is called a biologic. It essentially, it suppresses your immune system, and so it stops attacking you. And it is kind of labeled as the miracle drug, and it is incredibly it's incredibly helpful and wonderful if your body can tolerate it. For many, many years I was on that drug. I've been on many other similar drugs in the family in order to stay walking. And like I said, it was all thanks to my mom and all of her efforts with the Arthritis Foundation, and dragging me to all of these doctor's appointments at the U of I hospital. But it was also due to her praying nonstop. She, it was because of her faith in God that I am here today sharing this story.
And her love of you,
yes,
right? I'm a mother, I'm a caregiver, and you've said so many things, Corinthia, that resonate with me. Your mom left her job.
Yes.
She became your unpaid case manager. She became your full-time nurse and caregiver.
Yes.
She gave you supports that are beyond what, I mean, a mother would do anything for her children. Don't get me wrong. And I know many moms and dads who manage that same delicate balance of trying to get their kids what they need while also trying to help them be the best versions of themselves and have access to a somewhat typical life filled full of atypical doctor appointments and experiences.
Yes.
So I identify with that very much. She also talked about the need, and you also talked about her pursuit of clinical research studies in order to provide you access to new innovative treatments, to provide you access to what would ultimately be medications that would change your life and take you from an immobile wheelchair user to somebody who was independently ambulatory because of access to these innovative healthcare treatments. And then finally, you talked about the impact of not being able to access places physically, emotionally. And I think it's really important that we continue to hammer upon this point that when we talk about disability rights and we talk about social justice, the things that we're talking about are
real.
They're real, and it's about basic level stuff.
It is.
Access to the playground.
Yeah.
Access to the classroom.
Yeah.
Access to a doctor. We're not asking for things that are beyond the realm of possibility or scope for what we would want for everybody. We're just asking for the same access. And maybe instead of using the stairs to get there, you'd like to use a ramp.
Yep.
And so I think that
an elevator.
Or an elevator. If it's a two-story building, which should you have that choice and should everyone have that access?
Can I share my story real quick about my middle school? My mom was such a trooper. She went to war with the AEA because my middle school did not have an elevator. It was 2-story. And bless her, the only elevator in that school was a janitor elevator that was used for the trash can. And this is what I endured for 3 years. Was my friend I had a key on a lanyard, and that key I would stick in, unlock it, pull the chain link open. They would wheel me in, and then they would slide that chain link like over to basically secure me, and then push the button, and I would write up or down, and then they would run down or up to meet me, and I would just pray to God that somebody was there to meet me and pull me out. And my mom like fought tooth and nail for them to install an elevator and make that building accessible, because every single day she went to drop me off, there was no ramp to get in. There was nothing. She had to like push me up a curb, and it was unbearable. And yeah, like
what you're talking about is building code, and what you're
yes,
talking about are ADA accommodations. And
yes,
in the state of Iowa, most people don't know this. I run a group called Changing Spaces Iowa, and we advocate for height adjustable adult size changing tables. They're not
yes,
included in the ADA, and they're not included in what most county and municipalities use as their building code. And even though the International Code Council has made all of these improvements to access and accessibility for people with disabilities, in Iowa, we operate off 2015 building code.
right.
So even though it's 2026, we have an implementation gap, and certain entities and institutions like our Capitol building down here, schools that are older, well, they have exemptions. And so I think when we talk, we need to make sure we educate and inform our general public. These are things that children and people with disabilities, they've fought for 70 years, right? These are just basic access. Can I get into the space? And what you're talking about are the challenges that come. And if you're not an informed parent, that people deal with every single day, whether it's educational needs because you have dyslexia or a learning difference, mobility needs, if you have a physical difference and you need some sort of mobility aid. And these aren't one institution. This is an institutionalized mindset that we have to change.
Exactly.
So you talked about treatments, you talked about early diagnosis and intervention.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, this underlining theme of all of this is your mental health, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So did mental health therapy play a role coming up?
It did. I am a huge advocate for mental health. And like your support groups online, your Bible studies, your, connect groups at church, your, like getting coffee with a friend, whatever it, like going to therapy, like with a therapist. I have a therapist. She's great. And I go to Bible study every week. And I see family regularly that I talk to about this. It is important to talk to somebody about your ongoing changes in your body, about your struggles with your chronic illness, and just it is important to get these issues and whatever it is you're struggling with out, because you cannot handle it on your own, and you're not meant to. There's so many people that love you, and they deserve that chance to love on you. And that's something that I definitely had to learn early on. I, as a kid, definitely felt like this was my battle to face all by myself, and that, you know, I felt like maybe God didn't love me, and I felt like, all right, this is my burden to bear. And it definitely swept me into a really dark place really early on in life. And I attempted suicide actually at the age of 10. And I praise God every single day that that I, wasn't able to complete the act. And, I thank God every single day that I'm still here and that I'm able to share my story and that I'm able to help others. I urge everybody, as soon as you get diagnosed, talk to someone. Because like I said, you're meant to be here.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so personal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I just appreciate you being willing to be vulnerable and share that with us. And something that I think that's important, because you mentioned, community groups, Bible studies, connection groups, getting to families. Um, a prerequisite for all of those things is access.
Yes.
Access to your community, access to transportation, um,
Yes.
access to the medical care that you need to feel physically well enough to participate. Um, and I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind, that access is inextricably linked to mental health, and
Yes.
that you can't be mentally healthy when you are isolated.
Right. And that's what's so wonderful about a lot of the mental health advocates that I've met with. A lot, like even my own therapist has been willing to meet with me via Zoom or like via telehealth. And even my own healthcare team, a lot of them are willing to meet with me via telehealth. Because like there are days where I absolutely cannot leave the house. And that's something that I also like recommend to anybody that I run into, like, oh, they're having trouble with accessing a physician. And I'm like, ask them if they do telehealth. If your insurance will cover it, then do that. Because I mean, if they're too far away, but that your insurance will cover that physician, telehealth, because maybe you can, at least you can talk to them.
And I found for our family, there were some things that telehealth worked really well for. Like you're saying, if you're having a flare up day, you're having a day where mobility is already challenging and you're just not feeling great, telehealth is a great option. But I remember a very specific moment during COVID when we were doing telehealth, and our therapist was able to help us problem solve a challenge we had in our home. And the only reason she could do that was because she could see us in our home engaging with that challenge in that setting. And so I would just echo what Zach has said. Access is the base requirement for all of these things. And I just, again, want to thank you for sharing such a deeply personal story. We've had another I Am Able show guest to share a story of a young child attempting suicide or wishing death. And I think that it's so important we have these very purposeful, poignant conversations, because it's the best way we can raise awareness and advocacy and challenge the stereotypes about what it is to be a person with a chronic illness, a chronic health condition, a lifelong disability, and what it takes to manage it. It
Yes.
can't be done in isolation. It needs a village. It needs an entire, you mentioned health support in your care team. You're not talking about a single doctor. You don't just have a primary health care physician. You have a medical team that help you manage this lifelong condition. And that is something that has probably taken you the entirety of your life to learn how to use and access in order to be able to get the most support services you can from that team. It blows my mind when people still challenge the idea that people with disabilities are somehow choosing this, or they're lazy, or they just, because it's none of those things. You never would have chosen a life and a childhood so isolated and with so much darkness. You would have chosen light. You would have chosen friendship and happiness. And I have no doubt that by sharing your story, Corinthia, you are going to help someone else. I mean, it helps me better understand my dad when he is dealing with his own flare-ups. He who takes methotrexate and steroids every single day, even though he shouldn't take steroids because they're not good for you. But if he can't move his hands and he can't walk, well, that's not a life and an option either. And so I'm just so grateful to you for having listened to our show, for reaching out. I would encourage any other listener to be a Corinthia. You know, we want to share your story. So I'm a person loving and living and supporting someone living with rheumatoid arthritis. What advice could you give me in order to better support them, or anyone else who is just like me and now has their eyes open and realizes we can do more?
I would say even though you know, rheumatoid arthritis is often seen as an invisible disability. You have your good days and you have your bad days. Even on their good days, when they seem to be not in pain, they're in pain. They're just masking it very well. I have a friend that I joke with that she got me a sticker that says, "I am constantly in excruciating pain," and I have it on one of my water bottles, and I take it to work with me, and like my manager once saw it and she's like, is that legit? Like, is that for real? And I'm like, yeah, like, but you know, I'm smiling, I'm here at work, and because I have to be, you know, and it's the truth for a lot of us, for all of us. You know, we have, our pain scale is not what it looks like at the doctor's office. Our 10 is probably our baseline. Our, you know, it's more like a 20 would be, you know, our excruciating pain. And so when they say that they are in excruciating pain, you want to believe them and probably take them to the ER. And I say that in jest because, you know, a lot of us have a dark sense of humor, and that is something you will learn. But it's because we are a family of warriors. A lot of us have fought this disease for a long time, and you know, we have been given this fight, and you know, we're not going to give up. And but we love those who have chosen to stick with us, and you know, on our bad days, just give us a little bit of grace. If we lash out, we're sorry. It's the pain talking. Give us some gentle hugs, a heating pad, our favorite water bottle, and maybe some chips and a cookie, and we'll be okay.
Those are wonderful things and pieces of advice. Be kind, listen to people, take them at their word, right? And offer help. And when they turn you down, just do it anyway, right? Because it's hard to ask for help.
It is.
obviously, we just have 2 or 3 minutes left here in our show, Corinthia. And so you mentioned at the beginning of the show that the Arthritis Foundation has a walk coming up. It's going to be Arthritis Awareness Month. And so I want to make sure for our listeners who are tuning in and they decide that they want to participate in this event, they know how to find you all and where to find information. So let us hear it.
Yes. So you can find us at arthritis.org, or you can find info for the walk at walktocurearthritis.org/Iowa. And that's where you can sign up to become a virtual walker or a participant at the walk, which is May 2nd. And we would love to have you. If you want to look more into advocacy, we would love to have you sign up and go to arthritis.org/advocacy.
That's great information. And I'm sure you'll have many people who click. And I love, like all things you recommended, there's a virtual option.
Yes.
This is KHOI 89.1 Story City Ames, and you've been listening to I Am Able Iowa. I Am Able Iowa airs on the first and last Saturday morning of each month at 9 a.m. on KHOI 89.1 FM. You can also hear us streaming live online at khoifm.org. We invite you to share your comments, questions, and program ideas with us at doug@thearcofiowa.org. And if you visit www.thearcofiowa.org, you'll find previous episodes and more information about our program. I Am Able Iowa is produced by the Arc of Iowa, headquartered in West Des Moines, Iowa, with local chapters here in Ames and across the state of Iowa. Thank you for listening, and until next time, this is Nancy Baker Curtis and Zach Meekum saying, you are able, Iowa.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for being on the show. You were great.
Thank you.
Yes. I think we're still recording. Mike needs to stop us. I went over the last show, so I didn't want to do that. I just texted him. Control. So I texted him to let him know. This show will air this Saturday. We'll just cut this part out at the end. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. It's all right. So the show will air this Saturday at 9 a.m. And then I will tag you when I share the show, or the Arthritis Foundation. Okay. And I'll send you a link to the show on our Facebook live stream so that you can share it out on your social media channels before your walk.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks.
That sounds awesome. So it'll be on Facebook Live and
KHOI radio, both.
Yeah. Okay. So there won't be
this will also end up on YouTube.
Okay. Okay. That's what, yeah, YouTube. Awesome.
Yep. So it'll be all three. YouTube will come last because I'll have to upload it to that. We have a channel.
Okay.
And then I'll send you a link to all those things. Okay.
Awesome.
And so it may take me a couple days, but I'm always leapfrogging through life. You know how it is.
Oh, yes. I actually used to work in radio back in college. I volunteered with actually my parents in for a Christian radio station. So
Well, you did a great job, and this was a great show. So thank you so much for
thank
being
you.
on it, and thanks for tuning in and listening to us. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Bye.
Sorry. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Zach.
Bye.